This is a comic book called Old Man Gloom, and it's set in Santa Fe. And it's about Zozobra, who's the giant paper marionette who is ritually burned every year. And he's known as Old Man Gloom because he embodies the whole town, or not just the town, but anybody who wants to come and celebrate. He embodies their glooms or sadnesses from the last year. So if you want to burn away your sadness, there are ways you can write them down on a piece of paper and put them actually in Zozobra, and they can be burned away. And when I was a child, the first time that I saw Zozobra burn, I was kind of overwhelmed by feeling really sorry for him, while also feeling really afraid of him. And so the book sort of explores from the child's perspective that kind of take on Zozobra, but it also ties it in with New Mexico history and the Spanish conquest of New Mexico, and how one of the early Spanish governors of New Mexico was known for, it's Diego de Vargas, and he was known for this so-called peaceful reconquest of Santa Fe after the Pueblo revolt, when the native various pueblos around northern New Mexico banded together to drive the Spaniards out, and they managed to hold Santa Fe for 12 years. And it was really rare in American history that the native Indians drove out the European colonists. And then as a child, I was taught in school in Santa Fe that when Diego de Vargas came in and drove the native people out 12 years after the natives had driven the Spanish out, that was a peaceful encounter, that the Puebloans welcomed de Vargas and his army in. And that was only partially true, because in fact they welcomed him in at first, but then he went back to muster settlers, and when he came back there was a big battle and a big massacre, and the Spaniards prevailed, but they completely they massacred and enslaved the Indians. So that's tied in as part of the story, because when I was a kid, this de Vargas figure, this guy pretending to be de Vargas, would come to my school. He still goes to all the schools with his court of conquistadors, and they celebrate this so-called peaceful reconquest. And in my childhood mind, that history was always connected with Zozobra, because it happened around the same time. And the Diego de Vargas figure would tell us, now you have to go, it's time to go burn your gloom away, and put the sadness aside. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting way that those two traditions fit together, because Diego de Vargas is kind of telling you you're not supposed to remember the bad things that happened, you're supposed to push them aside, which basically is what happens on a community level in Santa Fe, because the Pueblo revolt and the massacre that happened afterwards is not taught. It's still not taught very thoroughly in the schools, as far as I understand. And maybe that's changing now, but I've talked to some people who say it's not. So the comic book is a long answer to your question, but the comic book combines that history with the personal history of this from this child's perspective of encountering Zozobra, and Zozobra actually ends up, this giant paper puppet, 50 feet tall, ends up following her around and kind of haunting her. So.